Yeah, I just finished my last question. I can't speak for the rest of my group, but I believe Elena is going to be the one sharing her screen. Is that right? So whenever everybody's ready for my group. Yeah.
Is that coming through?
Are you starting up there? Okay, what presents?
Is it presenting?
Present.
Is it
no,
screen?
it's not.
No.
It needs to go over to present. I had to stop myself. I nearly tried to do it on my computer, and I'm like, that's not my computer screen.
Oh.
I know, Sorry. It took me forever earlier to find it.
Okay. So this is our media literacy makerspace proposal. We are the Children's Librarians Public Library group. So the introduction to our makerspace is that it's a mini makerspace that will be inside the Thurgood Marshall branch of the Chicago Public Libraries. And so Thurgood Marshall is located in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, which is also right next to Englewood and West Englewood. And the demographics for that neighborhood are 5% white, 0.5% white, 96.86% Black, 1.5% Hispanic, 0.26% Asian, and 0.88% other. And the poverty rate is more than 1.5 times the rate of the rest of the state of Illinois. So our audience for this project is children grades K through 5 and their families. And we chose this audience because we thought there was a need for a makerspace, because a lot of the CPL branches have U media spaces, which are really geared towards teens, usually grades 9 through 12, and kind of getting them creative and using technology in new ways. And some library branches, including Thurgood Marshall, have these U media spaces that are for grades 6 to 8, but there isn't a makerspace or a U media space for kids in grades K through 5. So that's why we picked this project. So this is the layout for our makerspace. So the space that we have, we've rearranged some furniture in our imaginary but real library. And so we found a space that is 22 by 18 feet. And this is what we're planning to do. We've got a craft corner, a sensory space, a construction zone, and a section for coding computers. And so this is roughly to scale for what we've got. And so we had some pre-existing materials. We had some computer carols. We had a couple study tables, 8 chairs, and we also had 2 computers that were in storage. We weren't using them, so we figured bring them in here. And we've got 8 outlets, which are represented by the lightning bolts. Those are 2 outlets for each one. So there's 8 outlets, but they're in 4 areas. Notice that the outlets are far away from the sensory tables, which one of them has water. So we were being safety conscious there. All right, so that's it for the space. We also had 15 storage containers, which we can use for under table storage for items.
All right, so I want to talk to you about the ties to the Chicago Public Library and our programming that our makerspace would be having, because our goal is to prepare young kids for U media. So basically, this makerspace will work as a stepping stone, so that just like the goal of the Chicago Public Library, we want to serve all ages. So this is a way to be able to help meet the gap between story times and U media for school age kids. All right, and so it does cover our SMART goals too. So it does introduce kids to the makerspace. It discovers and creates and explores certification. We will host programs and opportunities to get certified. And it does, again, it very much responds to our CPL values, because it's about discover, create, and explore. It ties in perfectly with every summer when we have our summer learning challenge. Fits in perfectly with that. And a lot of the materials we're going to be able to have, we can easily resupply each year, either through regularly budgeted materials that were given through other events like SLC or the Chicago Student Invention Convention and other opportunities like that, and like the spring break learning challenges where we get more materials restock. Because we kept some of this very simple and low key, we're able to pull from these other material supplies as well as ask for donations from other branches within Chicago Public Library or local community partnerships as well. The next slide.
Okay, so scaffolding is really important to our space, since the space was designed to eventually migrate kids to the U media, which includes like more advanced technology. It was important for us to start with activities like by the age groups. So the kids should start with like sensory-based activities to develop their fine motor skills, and then they'll eventually start going to more advanced things that they can eventually do on their own without help from the librarian or whoever is in the space. So they can go from doing sensory materials such as playing at the water table. We also have sand, Play-Doh, and then they can do like building blocks. They can learn how to work with each other, magnet tiles, the B-bots, and then eventually to like the bracelet making, sewing, lanyard making, and just more advanced things that they can do on their own. Go to the next one.
All right, so our budget breakdown starts with some low-tech materials because our space is low-tech and no-tech actually. So these are no-tech materials for our craft space. So we've invested in kid scissors, both blunt and with an edge, liquid glue and glue sticks, color tape, craft sticks, pom-poms, pipe cleaners, and construction paper. You'll notice that the main con to all of these items is that they're all consumables. But as Allison mentioned before, we have a plan in place to secure funding over time. And we've also budgeted for recurring consumables, as Jordan will mention later on in our presentation.
So another reason that we also kept some things no tech at us all is because we want to make sure that some of these things are easily attainable for families in the area, and so that they ideally can see what we're doing and recreate something similar, low tech or no tech, at home for their child too. Because as a reminder, we're not just children's services, we're children and family services and engagement. So that's another reason why we do have things like colored pencils and crayons. And we do have 2 great opportunities to highlight community memberships through this Makerspace as well, with the Waste Shed, which is a local nonprofit that sells reused or new art materials at extremely low cost and offers free materials to teachers and librarians. And so they offer a monthly Waste Shed in a Box where you can curate what you like and put in simple requests, and they will match it as best as you can. So if we want to have glitter and unicorns, or we want to have everything in black and gothic Thanksgiving, whatever you could think of, you can send us a message request for the Waste Shed in a Box, and we have it set up to be able to get a year-long subscription. And speaking of subscriptions, we are going to also get 2 memberships, a year membership, which is incredibly cost affordable, and we're doing for $20 a piece, because you actually choose your membership prices, and we feel like that's a fair for somebody that's going to be using it for programs for the public. So 2 membership fees at $20 a piece, and you can actually check up to 7 items at a time. And I say items because it's not just tools in the sense that we would think of like power tools, even though they do have those. They have anything from camping and cooking things like an ice cream maker, which can be able to teach children about the science of atoms getting very cold while also very delicious. And other things that gives us an opportunity to really highlight features temporarily in our makerspace, as well as highlight a feature for families that the Chicago Tool Library offers, which is another big thing about Chicago Public Library is we're about our partnerships and our community. And we show that in our makerspace. Thanks.
Another part of the budget was like the sensory tables. We included two. One can be for the sand and one can be for the water. I know a lot of times we just see like one in the classroom, but they have to like change out the water and the sand, which can be a little crazy considering all the different types of materials that we do have. And then we don't know who might be working in the space. So with the sensory table, we also included a sand bucket kit. The toys that come with that, it's like a bucket, a pail, little boats and things like that. They can play with those in either the sand or the water. We also included kinetic sand versus the regular sand. It's less messy, it's easier to mold, and it helps them with their fine motor skills. And it's actually kind of cheap, I think. We also included Play-Doh. I found a kit that had 36 different colors. And then I also included a kit that had different molds and tools, such as like the little knives or different shapes that they can mold. The variety of colors promotes creativity, gets their minds going to all the different type of things that they can create. And then we also included the light tables in our budget. It helps them like with they can start like tracing and drawing and things like that. And that is one of the materials that they can use over the course of time. So like in the beginning, they can like trace their alphabet or different shapes and then progress to like bigger pictures and things like that.
Okay. And the last part of our budget breakdown, I focused on some of the more like techier things that we could use with the kids. So we are purchasing one Bebot, which is a little robot that acts as an introduction to programming for young children. They get a visual example of how pressing the like forward button will move the bot forward, how pressing the right turn will spin it to the right. And they're fairly expensive, so we only did one, and we also purchased some of the stuff to go along with it. So they have these mats that have a clear plastic cover, and it's a grid, and you could use the mat by itself, but we also purchased a couple inexpensive sequences from Teachers Pay Teachers there's a ton on there, so if we wanted to purchase more, we could, but starting out with a couple is good. You could use them as different like sequencing activities. So to move the bot along with the storytelling sequence to go along with the story, you can use the different cards as obstacles to program the bot to move around, or you could use it as an end goal to get to, like, you need to find this animal and there's, a little question card with a description of the animal and you have to program the bot to find that animal. The other more high-tech item in our makerspace is Scratch software, which is a free coding software for children that we could use on the library computers. We went with Scratch because it's a free software and it's also not curriculum-based like many of the other coding softwares around. So this allows children to try coding and kind of move it along at their own pace as opposed to following the curriculum that might not be matching up with them. We also have the Legos and Magnetiles bracelet making and lanyard making, which Antonia mentioned before is part of our scaffolding for our more no-tech options. The bracelets and lanyards are fairly inexpensive to replace supplies for, and you could purchase them like in bulk and get a bunch of materials at one time. And they could also be asked for as a donation, which Allison kind of mentioned, asking for donations to replace some of these consumables. And honestly, bracelets and lanyards are usually a giant hit for the age that we're trying to service. And then also the Legos and Magnetiles give us some building supplies for a variety of ages. We went with both Magnetiles and Legos because Magnetiles, while they're kind of more expensive and less bang for your buck than the Legos, they give us something that's easier for the younger ages to work with and give them more of like a basis for their building. They learn like, I need 4 blocks of the same size, and it's easier for them to maneuver than the Legos, which are pretty small. And we also included a monthly consumables budget of $100 per month for all of our 12 months for our grant. Next. And this is just a final breakdown of our budget. We spent $2,994.19, so almost our whole budget. Next. And that's it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
All right, let me see. I really like the library that you focused on. I was shocked at the poverty rate. I mean, I'm familiar with the area a little bit, but I shouldn't, I guess, be shocked. But whenever I hear those things, I always get upset and shocked. So just, I love that it's for K-5 and families. Like, I really like that focus on bringing, you know, the families and making it a family thing and making it something that they can do together. And then the thought that you had, you know, they can do some of this at home, recreating at home. I think that is very, very smart. I love your layout. I like that you talked about scaffolding because I think that's really important with this age group. And it's such a large range of an age group. But I think that that's really important to kind of plan for. And I really like that you're doing low tech and no tech. You know, makerspaces don't always have to be tech heavy, and it's okay if they are. But I think that they really need to focus on the needs of the community. And if we're talking about a community that has such a low poverty rate already, we need to think about what is happening in their schools. What are they experiencing in their schools? Which, by the way, is a whole other soapbox that when we talk about how Chicago public school system is supposed to be one school system, but if you go like by the North Shore in Chicago public, they have a whole bunch of better schools. That, like, every time I talk about those schools in Chicago public, I get really, really, really angry as a product of a Chicago public school until about 7th grade. And my friend lives in the city and her son is about to start kindergarten. Yeah. So the fact that we have to look at the different communities and what these kids might be getting at school, by the time they're older, like in middle school, like 6 and up, like you mentioned, some of those maker spaces for them using that tech, that's excellent. I think that is another part of that scaffolding, because you can't just throw tech at them if they're not experiencing it in their schools. And, you know, I think that's a great way to do it. So excellent job. Very well done. I like that I'm seeing all different types of libraries and library ideas for looking at communities. And we have one more group. So we're going to do our last group, and then we'll take a break after that so that we can kind of, you know, regroup before we get into the rest of the night. So we're just going to plow through.
Okay.